Thank you, Mr. Smithee. And Representative, thank you for your many years, decades of service here in the Texas House. You're obviously very familiar with the Texas House rules. Are you familiar with Rule 3 regarding the jurisdiction of our House standing committees?
Yes.
And in your time of service here in the Texas House, Representative Smithee, have you ever served as chairman of the House Committee on Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence?
Yes, I have.
And so, Representative Smithee, you are aware, pursuant to the House rules and as someone who served as chair of the House Committee on Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence, that committee, pursuant to the House rules, has jurisdiction over several state agencies, including the Office of the Attorney General.
That's right.
Mr. Smithee, is it your experience here in the Texas House that standing committees of the House that have jurisdiction over state agencies regularly invite testimony from the leaders of those state agencies to appear in front of those standing House committees?
I think that's true, and I think sometimes agency heads ask to appear before a committee even when they're not invited.
Is it your experience, Representative Smithee, that when a leader of a state agency is invited to appear in front of a standing House committee, that head of that state agency, that state leader, usually appears and testifies and accepts that invitation to appear in front of the House committee?
Mr. Leach, my experience has been that is not only standard practice, but that's what we would expect. And we would expect agency heads, and particularly in this case, I assume you're talking about the Attorney General. I would expect the Attorney General to make arrangements to be here.
Mr. Smithee, are you aware that I, as chair of the Committee on Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence, held our first committee of this session on March 1st, 2023, in which I extended a direct invitation to Attorney General Ken Paxton to appear in front of our committee?
I can't say that I am aware of that. I may have heard it at the time. And I will say he should have been there.
Are you aware as to whether or not Attorney General Paxton accepted my invitation to appear in front of our committee?
My assumption from your question is that he did not.
He did not. Representative Smithee, are you aware that at that committee I issued a standing invitation to Attorney General Paxton to participate in any subsequent hearing of the Committee on Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence?
I wasn't aware of that.
Mr. Smithee, are you aware that our committee, the Committee on Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence, held a dozen hearings, 12 hearings, during the 88th legislative session in which we took public and invited testimony?
I was at a number of those, even though I wasn't on the committee.
So we did a dozen committee hearings in which our committee, on which Chairman Murr was a member of that standing committee, held a dozen hearings during the 88th legislative session. And to your knowledge, Representative Smithee, did the Attorney General ever participate in or appear in front of our committee?
Not to my recollection, Mr. Leach.
That would be correct. He did not. Thank you, Representative Smithee.
Okay.